400, little over 400 acres. He actually gave him an offer for his place. He didn't like it, and so he held pretty fast.
Wow.
By the time they actually got him off of the land, they had already started.
All right, here we are. Reactor.
Okay. Shame on us, we'll have to fix that. You're looking at the front face of the reactor. This is it. How many of you folks have done this tour before? Anybody? A couple of you, okay. And I noticed on the sign-in sheet, almost all of you are from Oregon or Washington.
This got some mercury switches in here. Got robots up here coming up somewhere. Look at that safe. Old White Bluffs.
So that was area 1.
Look at that. Yeah. It's that old pin wiring. Love that. Yeah, Honeywell used to make a lot of these.
So it's kind of hard on the reactor because you go from all that heat to a fraction of the heat. No. As far as we can tell, no.
All right. Here we are. In the main control room, B reactor. Here's the big scram
so
wall.
there's a venturi on the inlet, and so it's monitoring the pressure in there. And then they have, you can turn the buttons, and there's a high and a low. So if you have a high pressure or a low pressure in the tube, it will scram the reactor. Control rod.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wiring.
Everything else is monitored.
Wow.
So open this valve. All that is pretty much. Need it to be able to operate the reactor and monitor the minimum parameters to be able to operate it safely. There's a couple pictures out in the hallway that you can see what it looked like in 1944. But this is where they actually operate the control rods to manage the power of the reactor. It was 250 megawatts initially. Over the years, they increased the power to about 2,000 megawatts thermal. This is the way they initially did it. And if that reminds you of a telephone operator switchboard, that's because it was. They repurposed the switchboard to be able to see the temperature in here. So they would take like 10 at a time, plug those in, and then they would read out on these recorders, and then they would write those down. It would take them 3 to 4 hours, 2 guys, to do that. Later, in operation. We have high technology here. They brought the Flexo-Rider in. And the Flexo-Rider could do in about 10 minutes what those two guys could do in 3 or 4 hours. It would record the temperature of every single tube.
Here's the big basin. Look at that. Trying to get one that's clean. There we go. They're cleaner up here. Yep, that is one rare critter there. You see it says General Mills on the controls. Here's a good shot of the controls. Look at that little robot. And that obviously must be the monitor so you can watch its progress and its light and its camera setup. Look at that cord. That is neat.
And then the inlet into the pipe that goes underneath where you were seated when we started, and then up both sides of the reactor, and then through the crossheaders to provide water to each of the process tubes. The water pressure at the face of the reactor, where the water is going into the reactor, was about 200 pounds per square inch. Later on, that was up to over 300 pounds. And the reason they did that, they went through a major modification in the mid-50s to increase water flow through the reactor. Under original construction, they were moving about 30,000 gallons of water a minute through the reactor. How much water is that? You stop and think, the city of Wilmington, Delaware, DuPont's corporate home during World War II, a city of about 125,000, consumed somewhere between 11,000 and 15,000 gallons of water a minute. This reactor alone was using 30,000 when it first started up. But they were slowly increasing the power level of the reactor, taking it from the original design of 250 megawatts, 250 million watts of heat, up to over 2,000 by the time this reactor shut down. And because of that, they needed more water flow through. So in the mid-50s, they did a major overhaul of this area to allow that increased water flow for up to 70,000 gallons a minute. These pipes you see with the valve covers removed, that is an artifact of the treaties that the US and the Russians negotiated in the early 90s, and where both sides agreed to cease plutonium production and to dismantle or make inoperative any reactor that was capable of creating plutonium. We were already there. This reactor shut down in '68. The last reactor on the site that shut down was the N, which shut down very soon after Chernobyl exploded, because there were some concerns that there were some similarities. There were not, but nonetheless, they shut it down. But the Russians had another problem. Many of their reactors, and Chernobyl was a good example, were dual purpose. They not only created plutonium, but they provided electrical power to the grid for the country. So it took them a while to replace that generating capability. But once they were in compliance, the US and Russia would trade visits each year where folks would come in and they could go anywhere they wanted to associated with those reactors. For example, the C, which is doors are welded shut, if they said open them up, they would open them up so that they could go in and see if there was anything going on in that reactor. In our case, what they asked is to remove these caps, these covers rather, then they took photographs inside the pipes. And when they came back each year on their visit, they would compare that photograph to a visual. And what they were looking for is any evidence that water had flowed through the pipes again. Just prior to COVID, they shut down these inspections. Both sides agreed they were unnecessary.
Okay, here's the source. Yeah, we used to play around with these back in the day. Hear it clicking? Okay, so that's just your salt, potassium. Gives you a little ring there. Look at that. Antique watch. She's hot. Antique glass. A little hot. Oh boy, smoke detector, old smoke detector. Screaming hot. There we go. The flea market Fiesta ware. See how bad it is? Hear that stuff? That stuff's still in people's houses, unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I look for it once in a while.
Yeah.
Because I got a house full of old
Yeah, so
Tupperware.
you can actually find it sometimes in some of the antique stores.
Yeah, and they don't even know how screaming hot it is.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that stuff's pretty hot, guys.